Hello, everyone, and welcome to RBCM at Home. My name is Kim Goff, and I'm a learning program developer at the Royal BC Museum. I'm coming to you today from my home, which is located on the territories of the Songhees and the Esquimalt First Nations, the Lekwungen-speaking people in Victoria, British Columbia. I want to extend my appreciation for the opportunity to live and work on this territory. RBCM at Home started in March when our museum and archive closed due to the pandemic. It was an opportunity to talk to staff about what they were working on from home. Now that some of us are back at the museum, this is an opportunity to continue to talk to folks from the museum and to reach out to those of you at home or at school around BC. Today, I'm joined by Royal BC Museum History Collection Manager, Paul Ferguson. As a collection manager, Paul's role is to oversee the documentation, care, conservation, security, storage, and sharing of the collection. Paul is also a member of the British Columbia Historical Federation. His personal interest in military history was kindled as a youth living overseas and across Canada. He has studied the complex network of the Canadian home front and visited memorials across Canada. Aside from 2020, he also travels internationally, largely to places that have been witness to the devastation of the First and Second World Wars. These explorations have taken him to England, France, Belgium, Holland, Germany, and Malta. Today, Paul is going to share some of his expertise from those experiences so we can all do a bit of armchair traveling alongside him. Welcome, Paul.
Hi there.
So Paul, where were you for the recording? Where were you planning to travel this year that, of course, had to be canceled?
I had hoped to join a tour to go to Salonika and Macedonia with a curator from the Imperial War Museum. There was about 15 of us slated to go, and that didn't happen this year. Maybe next year.
So when you and I first chatted about doing this presentation, you were missing that process of planning and thinking about holidays. I was feeling sorry for myself about having to miss my holidays. I was going to visit a good friend who lives in Belgium, and this year we were gonna get a car and we were gonna drive and go. I said I put my hand up. I wanted to see Passchendaele. And then you and I started chatting and thought, hey, well, let's have Paul plan this next trip when we can do it, what we should see and where we should go.
Sure, we can certainly do that today, and certainly what I've presented is with a couple of visitors in particular in mind. So today we're going to look at basically a 5-day tour, a quick trip of Ypres, Passchendaele, and Vimy. So hopefully you'll enjoy this. You might even find out about some tasty food that you may want to try out.
I'm going to take some notes. Feel free to
have to
share
ask later where, though, which
Okay.
restaurants.
Okay. So people can message Paul if they want the names of those restaurants, or stay on at the end and we can talk about
Okay.
Okay, Paul, you can begin sharing your screen and take us away.
Sure. Well, I'll try to take you away. Going to move you guys out of the way. So welcome everybody, and thank you to Kim and the learning team for having me come here today and present this small tour. I have done this presentation before, over an hour with nearly 80 slides. So this is very much a condensed version, and Kim challenged me by saying, Paul, you get 6 slides. So I've been challenged, and I got it down to 6, but there's like 24 photographs on these slides, which is not what I usually do. So what I was thinking is, just for the highlights of going on a 5-day tour, I think you should plan on doing some, understand what it is that you might want to see. So I always think in terms of 2 different aspects of the history of, in this case, of the Great War, the First World War, and that is operational history and remembrance history. You can do a combination of both. I would highly recommend that you obtain some of the maps that are available. You can get those overseas. You may be able to find them locally, but they're certainly readily available in France and Flanders. It's not a difficult find. Available in most tourist places. A lot of the hotels carry these kind of maps, bookstores, and other shops. Two books that you might want to try and have a quick look at are the Western Front North and the Western Front South. These were prepared by Major and Mrs. Holt, who were very active in doing tours. I'm not sure if they're still active anymore, but their guides will give you operational history and sites to visit. Whereas today's presentation is really just going to focus on a few of the highlights. Now, Kim has mentioned that she is going to be fortunate to take a car to get to these sites, and a car is actually really, really useful. I have also bicycled in and around the Ypres salient as far south as Plugsteert, which is probably 18 kilometers away to the south. And basically that entire circumference around Ypres. Basically, I just use a compass and draw a big circle around Ypres, and that's where I travel to quite a bit. You can also walk very easily the Ypres salient, and all three experiences will give you something different. The car will get you to a lot of different places. The bicycle will allow you to feel the terrain, the rise in the ground, and that's something that's almost critical to perhaps the soldier experience, because the high ground was all important during the First World War. Who controlled the high ground generally controlled the battlefield, and a simple rise of 6 feet when you have a simple kit on, a full pack and other gear, you really notice that. The same as walking. If you walk, you're going to have time to stop and see a lot of different things. When I first started traveling overseas, I was very much with an operational historian who wanted to get us to 250 different sites in 3 days. And that's a bit much. We saw a lot, we did learn a lot, but there are some people that I know, and I've become inclined myself, who could spend easily 3 to 4 hours in one spot trying to capture a single image for all time, because I really want to feel the presence of the places that I visit and get a sense of space. So my suggestion is a 5-day tour. Generally, I always fly into London, stay overnight in London, might take the train to Dover, which is about 2 hours and 30 minutes, and then take the ferry from Dover to Calais, which is about the same length of time as BC ferries from Victoria to the mainland. The other thing that I've done, and we've adopted this practice for the last few trips, is to take the Eurostar, the Channel, leaving from London St. Pancras and getting off at Lille. As I said, that trip too is only about an hour and a half long. And then I highly recommend, can I highly recommend? Well, I just did, I guess. Take a cab from Lille to Ypres. So I always base my trips out of Ypres in Belgium. There's a reason for that. That cab ride is only 41 minutes. When you share it with a friend, it comes down a bit in price, but you are not going to get lost. And when you're over there, time is of the essence. So you don't want to spend, as I have done, driving up and down, trying to get out of Lille for 2 hours, and then discovering that a taxi can get out of Lille within 10 to 12 minutes. So we want to save time where we can. As I said, determine what you want to see. Get some hard copy maps. That'll be hugely helpful. Over a 5-day trip, I would recommend that day 1 is just a travel day. Get to Ypres, which is in Belgium. Of course, this is the city that was virtually destroyed during the Great War. Lots of famous photographs and moving pictures of that scenario. And that evening, you'll probably get into Ypres, let's say at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Get to your place that you're staying at, go and have some tasty food. We'll talk about food later. But at 8 p.m., visit the Men and Gate Memorial, where they've been playing the last post there at 8 p.m. Since for many, many, many years. And the reason I start with that is the Men and Gate Memorial has over 54,000 names of the missing from from Flanders in Belgium. So it's quite a an interesting place to start your visit. Most people, they just stare at the panels of names. They're in awe. There's people there with tears. It has an emotional impact on people. Now, when I first started going there, there was probably only maybe 100 of us who showed up there during the evenings. But then as we went through all the centenaries, all the 100th anniversaries of the Great War battles, every night that I was there, there was 3,000-4,000 people probably. And I was very fortunate that November 2018, I was part of a team that looked after the event commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Great War. And we had well over 40,000 people. The ceremony seemed to go on from 7 a.m., the organizational aspect, well into the evening with BBC on site in the city square. The second day, I would recommend touring around the sites of Ypres. The third day, travel to Vimy, get a hold of a car. You can rent a car in Ypres. I recommend that more so than renting a car out of Calais or Lille. Day 4, go to Passchendaele. Go to Passchendaele, and then in the evening return to the last post ceremony, which after 3 days of traveling around, you'll even experience a different kind of emotion having seen what you've seen and then visiting the second time. And then on day 5, hop in the cab and go back to the tunnel or whatever you choose, and just take the cab. So what can we see when we're in Ypres? So here's your day 1 and part of day 2. There's a lot to see at these sites. This is in the upper left corner is the Men and Gate Memorial. A very important site. If you look through the archway, you can see the Cloth Hall, which is also shown in the upper right photograph on the left-hand side. Gosh, that sounds confusing. In that image of the Cloth Hall in St. Martin's Cathedral, the In Flanders Fields Museum is located in the Cloth Hall, which was completely rebuilt. This building was absolutely destroyed, as was St. Martin's Cathedral, and rebuilt to exact specifications prior to its destruction. The In Flanders Fields Museum is a wonderful, wonderful testament to the Great War. And it goes into little known aspects. It makes use of filmed actors presenting the history. There's other interactives that you can participate in there. Well worth it, and certainly 3 hours to 4 hour visit there. Their temporary exhibits are just outstanding. St. Martin's Cathedral is well worth a visit. Very, very quiet place, of course. In November, they host a remembrance concert there that is well worth seeing. But going to Ypres in November, very difficult to get hotels. You have to book in advance, and you still may not get in. And that is because of the sizable waiting lists for November. You have St. George's Church, which is just off the square. This is a place of a lot of British commemorations and Canadian, including British Columbia, within the chapel and about. And that's certainly probably a 1 to 2 hour visit as well. When you look towards Ypres, when you're outside of the city, always keep those towers and steeples on your horizon. Now that's true for anywhere in France and Flanders, as you can really orient yourself to the ground and your map, knowing where these are. And those are the easiest markers to find during your visit. On the second day, I recommend going to Vimy. As I said, start in Ypres, witness that last post ceremony, then go to Vimy. The drive to Vimy is, if I can find it here, just a moment, please. Oh dear.
Talk amongst
I've
yourselves.
misplaced it. It doesn't.
The drive is pleasant. Let's say the drive is pleasant.
The drive is pleasant, an hour and a half long. Be prepared if there's any kind of diversions on the road that may take you out of the way. Diversions, whereas here, the diversions are announced well in advance. In some instances, you may be trying to turn left and all of a sudden there's a diversion and you can't go left. You've got to go right. And you don't get any warning. It's just you peek around the corner and oh my gosh. And that may take you miles or kilometers out of your way. The memorial is a fantastic thing to visit. There's over 11,000 Canadian soldiers commemorated on the Vimy Memorial. These are Canada's missing in the battles of France. That memorial includes my great-grandfather who lost his life with the 31st Battalion CEF, which is an Alberta unit. There's all the sculptures by Canadian sculptor Alward, including this mourning figure of a man. It's quite a place. And your visit there is probably going to be, again, about all of half a day long, because there's also the restored trenches, all these sandbags that you see in this image. That's all cement sandbags. You can walk through there. If you are fortunate, the Grange Tunnel, which are the tunnels into the chalk beneath the ridge, you can have a tour of it. And this is also a National Historic Site as well. So there are Canadian employees there that are bilingual who can show you about, answer questions, and provide you other information. One of the things that you would notice at Vimy, as well as elsewhere in France and Flanders, you can see these sheep next to the warning sign. It is not uncommon for live explosives to be about. You can even see these alongside roadsides. The farmers tend to, when they're plowing their fields, will bring this material up after it's been there all this time and remove it to the roadsides where the Belgian or French ordnance teams pick it up for disposal. Don't pick it up. Don't bring it home as souvenirs. It is certainly not worth it. Now, Kim mentioned that she wanted to go to Passchendaele, and Passchendaele is a really amazing place. In the upper left corner is something called the Waterfields. This and the marshlands are where a lot of the well-known photographs taken of Canadian troops at Passchendaele were taken. They're shown deep in the mud and in the craters, water-filled, just awful circumstances. This is an area that was also heavily bombarded. The whole drainage system in this area was destroyed, which resulted in all the water buildup through this low ground. Now you can see in the Waterfields image that there's a road to the right of the sign. That road actually leads up to the town of Zonnebeek, which is the high ground. Zonnebeek is part of Passchendaele, and that's where the Canadian Memorial is, which you can see in the bottom left corner. The town of Passchendaele itself is 5 kilometers away from Zonnebeek. And I went there just to see what Passchendaele looked like, but it doesn't have as many of the features of the Battle of Passchendaele as Zonnebeek does. In Zonnebeek, the Memorial Museum, Passchendaele 1917, is located in this chateau. That is also another amazing place to visit. And I find it really interesting what the Belgian museums choose to portray the Great War through artifacts and other interpretation compared to what I'm used to seeing, certainly in Canada. They come at it too from the aspect that this occurred on their ground and how it affected the local populations in very deep ways. Some of the other things that you could visit in Belgium, apart from touring around Ypres and touring around Vimy and Passchendaele, are the Saint Julien Memorial. This is the Brooding Soldier Memorial located at Vancouver Corner. This is north of Ypres, a memorial dedicated to the first gas attack on the Western Front of April 1915. This memorial was actually something that they had originally anticipated that they were going to use throughout France and Flanders, but in the end they chose a different design and made this memorial unique unto itself. To the right is Talbot House at Poppering. Poppering is behind the lines, so it was not, although it was subject to perhaps a little bit of bombardment, it didn't go through the devastation like its neighboring town or city of Ypres. Ypres is about, I think it's about 15 or 18 kilometers to the east of Poppering. And the place to visit there is Talbot House. Talbot House was a rest and relaxation area for troops who could just get away from the war when they were allowed to, and spend time in the comforts of others who've shared in the similar difficulties. It is now a place that you're allowed to stay there once this COVID pandemic is over. I hope that, I think they can take about half a dozen visitors at a time. People can volunteer to be warders there for a month at a time and look after the guests. There is a wonderful museum located in the back. And walking up, you take the stairs, this pull-out set of stairs up to the attic where the chapel was located. Now, Talbot House is, the signaler's code for Talbot House was Talk H. And this place was developed by a British chaplain known as Tubby Clayton, whose brother lost his life. And his brother's original wood marker is up in the chapel area. There's a wonderful video that portrays there, is shown there. And when you walk up these, it's quite a steep incline to get into the attic, but between the rungs of the ladder, there's different inscriptions all the way up. It's quite a place. I highly recommend going there. Another thing to keep in mind, there's different visitor centers. I should have mentioned that there is a visitor center at Vimy Ridge, well worth seeing. There's another one in Belgium at Lissenhoek, which is really interesting. It's one of the newer ones that's been done. Lissenhoek is one of the Commonwealth War Grave cemeteries, has about 11,000 casualties at it. And the visitor center itself, again, really interesting interpretation of what you're going to see in that cemetery, and a discussion of what they found while they were developing it. Tynecott Cemetery is in and around the area of Passchendaele. This is the largest cemetery on the Western Front. Very poignant. It's a sea of headstones. Many of them are soldiers known unto God. They were never identified. And there's a very large memorial wall in behind. Places to go into France if you happen to have time. This would be hard to do in a single day because Vimy is going to take up a lot of time. I said half a day. I've been there several times. You can always find something new at these places when you visit. I tend to go to similar places over and over again, but I'm always trying to capture, as I said, that essence of the moment or feel my place on these vistas. Lac Nagar crater is somewhere that I go to in France fairly often. This is a 98-foot deep crater created by a mine that was detonated on the 1st of July, 1916. There is a memorial just outside of it that's usually covered in poppy wreaths. A huge number of visitors were there. The last time I went, all kinds of buses. And of course, the last time I was there was at Lac Nagar would have been August of 2018. And it was the start of the wrap up of all the centenaries. There was buses everywhere. Thiepval War Memorial. Sorry, Kim?
I was just wondering, did you say what caused the crater at Lac Nagar?
Yes, that was a underground mine that was detonated and exploded beneath the trenches. So the 1st of July, 1916 is the worst day of the British Army. There's in excess of 30,000 casualties at these locations. Thiepval War Memorial, which is shown here, there's over 72,000 commemorated on that memorial to the missing. Because I'm interested in the poignant nature of these places, I'm especially interested in going with new visitors and finding out how they react. the size of this one memorial it's absolutely massive. But then you get inside, and I was fortunate to record one person's experiences of how they reacted to it, and wrote about that at one point in time. Another thing you might want to consider, I've shown a picture here of Mill Hill Road, also on the Somme, is walking in these areas of the battlefields. It's, I mean, we're not talking about, you know, looking and picking up things. We're talking about just feeling the ground, becoming accustomed to where things are located. For example, I know here we're walking up towards one of the cemeteries up on the horizon, but I also know what's down below this ground as well. So I think the most important thing is to determine what you want to see, leave some room for exploration as well. There's some very easy walks that can be done. If you're comfortable walking 5 to 8 kilometers in a day, you can walk from Ypres to some really interesting sites. And then finally, I've shown Beaumont Hamel, which is also another National Historic Site dedicated to the Newfoundland Regiment. And I have some friends in British Columbia who are from Newfoundland and asked if I would go there. So I did that for them and take pictures of their relatives' names. Other things that I would suggest is if you're interested in food, I would recommend that around the area called the Grote Mark, which is the big square in Ypres, pretty much any of those restaurants there will offer something quite tasty. I highly recommend Flemish stew. It's hearty, it's wonderful. I would highly recommend toasties, as they call them, which are ham and cheese sandwiches, which are done like ham and cheese sandwiches that you've had nowhere else. So really recommend that. There is no end of chocolate stores. Now that's really important to my wife, Rosemary, and a number of my friends who ask me when I'm going back. And if you're interested ever in going for a November visit to these sites, I would highly recommend trying to book early. Try to get to the St. Martin's Cathedral concert. The chance of getting in for the November 11th performance is pretty much nil, but I think they start on the 9th and probably run through the 12th. They also, at another location in Ypres, have a performance of Journey's End, which is a well-known play and film now, starring, I think, Benedict Cumberbatch is in it. It was written by a soldier veteran after the Great War, and it's absolutely excellent. So I think that's almost everything. I would, however, I just see some other notes. You can purchase euros at the Royal Mail post offices in London, which is pretty handy. Take extra camera batteries. Don't forget they're on a different electrical system there. Take extra cameras if you can. I generally travel with at least 2, if not 3. And I do use this multiple charging device because over the years I learned I don't like getting up every 2 hours to change batteries to get them charged. I think that's good. I'm not sure if we've got time for questions or.
We do. Paul, I'll get you to stop sharing your screen so folks can see you again in a nice view. There you are. Yeah, I would add 2 cameras, and that second camera can just be your iPhone really, or your smartphone, and a better camera with a bigger lens. So I often found that I'm changing from my big lens to a small lens, and that's taking time. So I use my iPhone when it's something near close up and easy, and my better camera for other things. And that's been a time saver for sure.
Excellent.
Lori, who's watching with us on Zoom, when you were talking about Vimy Ridge, spoke about how emotional it was to be there. Do you recall a place or a time that you visited that's had the biggest impact on you?
That's a great question. I've been there a number of times, and I can't say what year it was. The first time I visited had a big impact. That is before the memorial was restored, which was restored in preparation for the 100th anniversaries. And so I saw my great-grandfather's name there for the first time. in amongst all those panels that had aged with the years. And that had quite an impact. But I do think that the rededication of the memorial before the centenaries probably had the biggest impact. There was a huge number of visitors there from Canada, and there was, I've mentioned this before, there was all the military pomp and ceremony with it. We had low-flying jets, we had military bands, and I kept sitting there thinking there was something else I wanted. And that something else turned out to be a Métis fiddler player, Sarah Nobel, who played from the memorial. And I got interviewed about that by CBC. And they asked me, first off, they phoned me really early in the morning, Belgian time. I was in bed. And they asked me, what did it sound like? And at first I couldn't think of it. So there was a bit of a pause. And then I said it sounded like home. And then on their side, there was a noticeable pause. So yeah, that had the most impact for sure.
Oh, amazing. Paul, thank you so much for sharing some of your expertise about this area. It's certainly given me ideas for what I would like to see when we're all fortunate and well enough to travel again, if that is something people are able to do. So thank you for that. And I want to thank everyone who joined us today. If you were late or missed something and you want to go back, or you want to share this with someone else, it has been recorded and you will find it on the Royal BC Museum's YouTube channel in the next few days. So please have a look there. The Royal BC Museum has reopened and we are ready to welcome you back. You can find out more on our website about time tickets and our exhibits. We will be continuing our at-home kids and at outside for the foreseeable future. And links for all of these programs are posted on our website. I would like to just add that coming up next, today you saw Canadian war sites in Europe. Coming up next, we have a couple of great things on the schedule. On Wednesday, November 18th at 7 p.m., we're having a special ticketed talk in the evening with our curator of art and images, Dr. India Young, and she'll be speaking about Emily Carr's influence on modernist painters in British Columbia. You can find out more at rbcm.ca/tickets. And for our next At Home on November 24th, I will be speaking with friends and colleagues from the Exploration Place. So I hope you'll join us then. And thank you all for taking the time today to be with us. It looks